But the Pope has given us both options. He says both are as holy. Of course, somebody might like the extraordinary form more than the ordinary form. Some might like the ordinary form more than the other. But if you enter into the depth of what's happening there, and you give your heart to the Lord in the midst of it, you're going to know the reality of that sacrifice.
That is correct, Father. And I think it's a wonderful point that you bring that up, because unfortunately, a number of these groups, they like to call themselves traditional Catholics. Well, here's the thing, Father. When has traditional Catholic teaching been to reject the papacy, to reject the magisterium? I'd like to think that traditional Catholicism is accepting the papacy.
Of course. In fact, if Catherine of Siena were around, she would be whipping them.
Oh, yes. She'd be outraged at such illogical theological teaching. Not even theological teachings, just illogical theology. And I think it's another very good point that you bring up, that this Pope is here to reconcile people, to try and bring them to the faith. And it's a very good point. What are these Sedevacantists going to do when so many come towards the faith? So many are reconciled with the papacy. What are they going to do? Well, the thing is, Father, unfortunately, some of them are going to continue being obstinate. Some of them are going to continue saying, they'll develop new arguments. Well, you know what? Here's one argument that I heard. For instance, they'll say, well, you know what? Even if it does go back to the old form of consecration, well, that's only the devil working in the church, trying to bring people. But it is illogical, Father. To be quite honest, these people want to be rebellious.
And that's the whole thing with, like, sola scriptura. Who is the one who interprets the Bible? Who is the one who interprets the faith? If we don't have a pope, then any of us can interpret. So we have to rely on the Holy Spirit working through the pope and those bishops united with him. If not, we're lost. We're sunk.
We're lost completely. And again, you're right about that. It brings you right back to the door of Protestantism. Because if you're going to deny the papacy, and you're going to do it upon basically your own theological musings, well, you've got a problem there, because what is your authority? You're going right back to the whole method of private interpretation, right back to the method to claim that Vatican II was a false council. Well, these individuals, some that really don't even attempt to reconcile the teachings of Vatican II with previous historical traditional teachings, they're immediately jumping on the bandwagon of Sedevacantism.
Of course. And there's another thing there, what Benedict is actually doing with the St. Pius X group, is they're re-examining the council to see what did the fathers actually say. And, because we know in this country especially, the New York Times taught a lot of priests and religious and laity. They jumped with the New York Times rather than reading the documents and understanding them in the light of continuity of faith. And so that's what Benedict wants of us.
That is correct. And that brings another good point up, Father, because a number of these individuals, they subscribe to conspiracy-like theories. They'll say, well, you know what, this newspaper reported that a certain pope was a Freemason. Okay, well, guess what? The Catholic Church came out and they said that the studies done are completely outrageous and wrong. Well, how are you going to take the word of a secular newspaper? How are you going to take that word over the word of the Catholic Church? I mean, it's so absurd, Father. It really is. The claims that these individuals make of certain popes being Freemasons, they have no basis whatsoever.
But you know what? Even if a pope were a Freemason, now, of course, I don't believe that, but even if a pope were a Freemason, we'd have to even go back in time. What about the popes that were adulterous and have wives and have children? What about the popes who lived very immoral lives? Then we'd have to say, well, they weren't valid popes either. So, you get into a real sticky situation. If one pope is not valid, then they're all not valid.
You've got a wonderful point there, Father, because that brings me right back to the issue of Pope Liberius. A number of early fathers thought that Liberius signed the Arian Creed. They thought that he subscribed to the heresy of Arianism under pressure. Well, you didn't see any of these church fathers claiming, oh, well, hey, look, the See of Peter is vacant. You didn't see this argument. And another argument that is brought up, and you see it all the time, these individuals claiming that Vatican II was a false council, and they say, well, look, Look at the fruits that have come forth from Vatican II. There was so much sin, so much disarray in the church. Well, if you want to look at that, if you want to say that the fruits that have come forth after Vatican II have been negative, well, if you want to apply that logic, which I do not consider logic, to this situation, you can look back to the Council of Nicaea. Right after Nicaea happened, you can't look and say, oh, look, Arianism was stamped out. Arianism wasn't stamped out. It continued to run rampant, and indeed we needed the Council of Constantinople to continue tossing out these anathemas against a heresy that grew even more. So what are you going to say, that Nicaea was a robber council and that it was a fall? It's a logic, Father. You see the point, right? It is a logic.
Of course, and then you look at the fathers. What did they always say? Ubi Petrus, ibi Ecclesia. Where there is Peter, there is the church. That's the reality. If we lose Peter, we don't have the church.
We don't have the church. And where do these individuals think that the church is? What they're doing, Father, and there is such a darkness within Sedevacantism, because I've been to many places. In fact, not long back, maybe about 2 years back, I debated in a Sedevacantist church, and I sat through the whole service, Father. There's no mass that they have. I sat through a 3.5-hour service before the debate, and the darkness in there, Father. In their faith, there is no priesthood. There are no valid sacraments. These people, how sad, Father, to not be able to partake of our Lord in the wonderful Eucharist. It is such a sadness that you feel such a darkness, and it really is disappointing. It is what are these people waiting for? They're waiting for a miracle. They think that God is going to come down and institute a new pope in the place, because to be honest, how else will there be a pope? All the bishops are heretical. All the priests are heretical. How are we going to elect a new pope?
Yeah, it's a vicious circle. And, you can see the same thing in extreme liberals in the church, For them, they might not say there's no pope or no valid papacy, but in reality, they don't accept the pope. So you have these two extremes. The reality is we're not liberal, we're not conservative, we're not traditionalist, we're Catholic.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's a wonderful point that you bring that up, Father, because to be Catholic is to accept the papacy, is to recognize that we have 7 valid sacraments, and that is part, and that is a biblical faith, Father. You can find this, you read the historical biblical text, and unfortunately, a number of Protestants, Sedevacantists, they like to claim. They say, well, we have no papacy. And if you ask them, well, how are you going to get a valid pope there? They'll tell you, well, they'll say, well, you don't need another pope in that seat. We're going to be like this till the end of time, till Christ comes. Well, unfortunately, if you read Acts chapter 1, when we're seeing the office filled, we see that the Greek word episkope is used here. And we see that the office of a bishop must be filled. You cannot have the office vacant perpetually. It must be filled. And the unfortunate thing is this text is speaking specifically about the office of a bishop. And what is the Pope? The Bishop of Rome.
Of course. Now, let me ask you now. I've known different people, and you know how it is. It's just like banging your head. No matter what you say, they're going to fight against you. And even the whole thing about the Mass being codified at the Council of Trent, and they don't even look back and see the changes that have taken place even after it was codified. Shortly after that, how the Holy Father changed things and kept changing things. So, if someone is listening to this podcast, this show, where else can they get information to research these things and to know the reality of the truth that we do have a valid pope, and we've had valid popes from the beginning, from Peter on.
That is a wonderful, wonderful point that you bring up. There's a great book that is put out by a Catholic apologist. His name is Patrick Madrid. He puts forth a book on, I believe it is called More Catholic Than the Pope. And another good resource that I would recommend an individual they can find a cheap used copy. It is called A Manual of Dogmatic Theology. And this is not what they would call a Vatican II manual. This was used in the church for a long time. It is from Adolf Tanqueray. It is called A Manual of Dogmatic Theology. And another thing that I would like to put forth, Father, is for quite some time, I've been working on a number of articles, and in fact, I'm working on a book that I hope to put out within 2 years. And I've got a website that right now I do not have it up live, but I'm working with a number of individuals, and the address is ContraSedevacantism.com.
Okay, spell that out for us.
It's ContraSedevacantism.com. ContraSedevacantism.com. And what I plan to do here is working with a number of individuals who a number of them have come from Sedevacantism to the Catholic faith, and we're going to put forth complete refutations, everything that Sedevacantism can put forth. We're going to provide not only biblical, historical, but patristic proofs that show that Sedevacantism cannot be logical in today's day and age, or ever, basically.
That's great. Now, you have some things on YouTube already, don't you?
That is correct, yes. I've got a number of debates that I've participated in, and I have a number of talks that I've given. I gave a talk in Corpus Christi on the validity of the new Mass, and I've also debated a number of individuals, and as well in I want to say, God willing, in March or in April, I will be debating in San Antonio, Texas, on the validity of Vatican II. So anybody that does go to that website, they'll be able. Of course, everything that I provide here is free. I'll be providing free MP3s and free debates for people that really need this, that they can download it and they can listen. And God willing, they can get something positive out of this.
Very good, very good. Well, that's wonderful. I'm really grateful to you for sharing all of this information, and you'll have to keep up to date with me on your website when it comes out, and maybe we can talk about some other topics within this in another episode.
Oh, absolutely. In another episode, God willing, we can even talk about Vatican II. That'd be wonderful.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing your information with us, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate that. Maybe they'll have some questions, and we'll get you to pop in again.
Great. All right. You have a good evening, Father, and God bless you.
God bless you. Well, this episode is a bit longer than our normal episodes. We're over an hour. I'm sorry for that. But the great thing about podcasting, you can stop your MP3 player and start it up again when you're ready to listen in. If you haven't done so already and you'd like to get a copy of the iPadre app for either the iPhone, Apple products, or you want to get the Android, just head over to the show notes, or you can go to iPadre.net and you'll see a link in the right-hand side. It's been great spending this time with you. I look forward to next time, and until then, God love you.
SQPN, leading the way in Catholic new media.